This week we're doing animal drawings. I think you'll have fun with this. As a preliminary to this video, I posted a couple of other videos. One of them was talking about gesture drawing and contour drawing. So be sure and look at that. And gesture drawing, as I pointed out, was a quick inside scribble showing the placement of the different parts of the body and the proportions, and it's a real good quick way to establish where the animal is on the page. And then the contour drawing is a very slow, careful drawing of where your eye is following the edges. So I used this as an example, and then I used the little chickens as an example. So you can see both of those have value, the line drawing and the quick scribble drawing. So be sure and look at that. And then I also posted a segment of the video that I had done for my watercolor class. And I figured it was just as valid for you guys. So it's about looking at the animal, and especially if you're doing a close-up of a face, and getting the angles correct and the eye placement and so on. So be sure and look at that one too. Eyes are usually halfway up a front face, but not always. It depends on the animal. Mammals and people sort of have that proportion. And we talked about baby animals and baby humans and how the eye placement changes. And then, of course, it depends if you're looking straight on or if the animal's head is tilted or turned to the side. You'll get different angles. So one of the important things is to look at negative space and look at the spacing between the eyes. How much space is between the eyes? On a human being, there's about one eye width between the eyes. What is the spacing? You know, if you did a plumb line, dropped a plumb line, where would it come to meet the nose and so on? So not only angles, but how much space is next to the eye before you get to the edge of the face. What is the distance between here and here, and even on legs and so on. So do those not only where lines connect to different parts of the body, but also how the different parts of the body relate to each other and the distance between them. So be sure and look at those two videos. Now we're going to be looking at using colored paper, like a colored ground. So this is what I bought, this mixed media paper, and it's blue and it's very smooth. There's no tooth at all. So it's like a real flat surface, and we'll see how it works. I haven't actually really used it yet, so we'll see how it's going to work. Hopefully okay. And I got this at Staples. And then I think I got this also at Staples last year, and this is also a toned paper, and it's nice because you can tear it out right on this edge, and it has a ring binding. So this was pretty inexpensive. 50 sheets turned out to be only about 25 cents a sheet. So that's a brown paper. So you have different choices. The other thing I talked about is, if you'd like, you could do a watercolor, create your own colored ground by painting watercolor over surface, or even sections. Like you could have the animal shape painted on and the background painted on different color, and then you could color pencil over that for texture. So you can use your basic Bristol paper for the watercolor wash, and that's the vellum surface, or you could use a hot press watercolor paper, which is really nice, flat surface again. So any of those papers are good. So just here's an example of a watercolor that has some colored pencil on it. And I think I've posted these on the Google Classroom so you can look at them. So you can see that there's some texture and some expressive lines that will happen. So look at the edge of the elephant's nose where it's wrinkly. That's been done in colored pencil. This is one that had graphite pencil and then watercolor with it. And it's very loose. but I could easily go in and work with colored pencils on top of it. So let's take an orange here, and I can start to bring more orange on this, or if I wanted to show a shadow side of the, maybe it looks like the sun is coming here and I wanted to bring more shadow into that shadow side, I could start to go in with some blue and color back and forth. Or I could go in with some blue on the background to start to emphasize different parts of it. Back and forth, back and forth. Or if I want to be a little wilder, I could go in with some outlines. In expressive strokes like Wayne Thiebaud. Here, let's go in with a bright orange outline. So there's lots of ways you can add colored pencil to a watercolor underpainting. And I haven't even really talked about texture yet, but let's say we wanted to show some texture here, the furriness of the cat. And you can be real colorful. If you have a boring color gray cat, get in there and put some wild colors with it to start to show some fur. Usually there's a little bit of furry texture in the ear here. Or some outlines. There's the sunny side. There's the shadow side. Let's make this tail a little furrier so we can show some texture here. Here's some shadow. There's a cast shadow by pushing harder. So you can see what I've started to do here. This is a picture of our Sheltie that I did many years ago with watercolor first and then colored pencil over it. So I can take, this is Trudy, our little Sheltie. So I can start to take, here's a brown, this is a burnt sienna, and I can go in and start to show some of his fur a little bit more. Or her, it was a she, Trudy was a she. Can bring out the white in the eye, I hope. A little sparkle in the eye. And the nice thing about this is you can be expressive in your color. It kind of depends on the type of painting or drawing you want to have. It doesn't have to be brown. You could go in with red here and throw a little red in just for fun. Or a little blue in the shadows. So instead of this boring gray here, let's go in with ultramarine blue and start to show that in the shadows. So fur, feathers, those kind of textures, scales. So I hope that is another idea. But I think most of you will probably stick with the idea of the piece of paper that's a colored ground. And this is another one of our pets who's no longer with us. She died last year. This is Totter, our desert tortoise. And we had her for 30 years. Our son, who's in his mid-30s, or actually late 30s now, got him when he was around 6 years old, got her. This is Totter. There was Teeter and Totter, and Teeter teetered over in the garden one day, and we found her no longer living, but Totter lived on. So I looked at both of these, and I think I liked this one because she's facing us. So we have a difference in the angle, and you want to think about your preliminary drawing. I'll get a regular pencil here. And you could do a preliminary drawing if it's easier for you with white pencil. It does erase. The other thing is you can do a preliminary drawing on another piece of paper and transfer it. And you can use the graphite transfer paper, although it's maybe not as visible. Just so you know, Saral, S-A-R-A-L, that company, makes white and yellow graphite transfer paper. So you can use it the same way. But I'm just going to go ahead and draw it. So I'm looking at the angle here, and I'm saying I want to try and create that same angle. I think I'll stand up to get this. And I also want to fit it on the page. So she's going to be maybe a little bit bigger than this. You want to decide too, is your paper going to be vertical or horizontal? So you want to look at your photo and really make the decision. Is it more of a, is this more of an uppy downy vertical painting or drawing? If you go to the highest point and the lowest point here, you know, that's how tall she is, and this is how long she is. So it's a little more of a horizontal. So make sure you put your paper the way that makes the most sense. I would draw it very differently if I was doing this angle here. So I'm going to start with a line kind of like this, and maybe I'll do it in white so you can kind of see it. So there's my first initial line that shows the angle. And then we have the face and the shell. And you want to keep your animal from leading us off the page, so it's better to have a little more space where the head is. Like if it's a standing up animal or something, you don't want to have the head right at the top. You want to have a little more space where the head is. It's a good idea to, unless you're doing a close-up of just a face, it's a good idea to have some foreground. It's okay to have a close-up portrait of just a face going off the page, but you don't want to have the feet on the edge of the paper if you're doing a whole animal. And I'd prefer that you didn't do one where the animal is off in the distance of a landscape, but let's focus on the animal so you can see the texture. In this case, we're going to have a lot of texture of the shell and the scales. So I've kind of drawn that in, and then I maybe want to draw in the contour also. So I'm going to start to show her face, and she's smiling, I'm sure. And there's some layers of her skin folds that follow the curve. It's almost like a cylinder. And then her shell. And we're seeing it foreshortened, so we don't see the length as much as a side view because we're looking down it. It's what we call foreshortened, so it'll be a little shorter from this angle. So watch for that on your animal too, is what's the viewpoint you're looking at. And then she has that wonderful scaly little foot there. And I might have to refer to another drawing. I can't remember exactly what. Yeah, she has, looks like 3 toes that show. I should know this. But I could also cover it up with the grass too. If you're working sitting down and looking at it this way, I just realized I elongated this because I've sort of created a foreshortened kind of thing. So it's better to look at it from above to get the proportions right. And I don't really see the other foot, but I'll show it kind of sneaking out there a little bit. Now I want to get this detail fairly accurate, and then I'll start coloring in some of the texture for you guys so you can see it. So there's that big hunk or design or pattern. And as we go around the back, we don't see as much of this because it's going around the back contour. And here's where we can line it up. So this little chunk comes right kind of at the middle of the head here, this little chunk. So I want to try and make that accurate. And I didn't get this division in the right place because I want to relate one part to the other. So this part comes down, and right in here is where these two parts separate. So before I start coloring in with the colored pencils, I want to make sure this is fairly accurate in how I've divided these sections up. And again, this is really narrow because it's going off the other side. And this gets more flattened because we're seeing it from the side view like the top of a cylinder, like the ellipse. It's been squishified. Okay, so I have a reasonably accurate view of this. Now I also have shadow and sunlight. So I want to make sure I show maybe more warm colors in the sunlight side and cooler colors on the shadow. I don't think I want to make her smiling quite that much. I kind of exaggerated that. Okay, so I see a lot of orange in there, so maybe I'll start off with some orange. I'm going to also lift a little bit of my pencil with my kneaded eraser so that I don't have a lot of scribbling going on. And I can add that in the shell, but on the top of the head, I think I'll start with some yellow and in order to really make it visible, yellow is not going to ever show up really clearly. I'm going to push kind of hard. Now I'm putting a second coat of orange, so I'm layering, and that's mixing color on my paper. And then maybe I'll use, I could use the burnt sienna brown, or I could go with a cool color and go in with a blue. So I think I'll use the brown here at first. And I'll start to use a little bit of brown down here on the shadow side. And because this is a nice colored ground paper, I don't need to put in a lot of background. I'm going to put in some nice strokes of grass with greens and yellows, and I think that might be all I really need. I'm going to use the ultramarine blue for the dark mouth opening, and for the eyes. And again, I think I made that mouth a little exaggerated. And then I'm going to stroke some blue on top of the brown to start to get that dark shadow. And maybe go in here, start to get that dark shadow. I wonder what would happen if I use my colorless blender. I will give it a try, and if it wrecks it, then at least you guys won't. Doesn't seem to be doing much. So don't hesitate to use it if you want. It's not going to wreck it. Now I'm going to go in with a little bit of darker orange or red, reddish orange, and make, well, I'll use this. And it's good idea to have a test paper. I don't actually have this color. I should probably cut one up, but I have some colors I can test to see how it might look. So I'm going to go in now and really study all these little texture bumps here. And it looks like little octagons or circles. And I'm going in, I'm exaggerating the color because I'm kind of a colorist sort of person. I like color. So but I could also have used just the brown. And maybe make sure my pencil is nice and sharpened so I can get these little lines. And the shadows or the texture continues down in here. And I might want to use a little white. And it's kind of getting a little light down in here. I know she had a little nose, but I don't see a nostril there. So here's a bit of a texture I've done. So let's try doing a base coat over here. Let's start with a pale color, like maybe a peachy color. And put that on lightly. And I'm going kind of fast because this is a demo. Next, maybe I'll layer some yellow on. So what I'm going to do is do kind of a base coat and then put the dark lines on top. You can always go darker on top of lighter, but you can't always go lighter on top of darker. For some reason, I'm seeing a line going through. Oh, that was that white line that I did. Okay, don't use white for your gesture drawing. That was that angle line I did. Okay, so I've sort of established a warm color base coat. Now I'll go in with a little more yellow as I'm starting to see the differentiation here. A little more peachy color maybe. Orangey color. And then a little browner on the top of that hunk of her shell. The shell divisions. So I've got So I've got some color put on there. I haven't really done the texture yet. So now I'm going to do the texture. And I think blue is going to work better. This is actually a violet. It's considered a violet. And don't be afraid to use black once in a while too. I've got a black pencil. I always like ultramarine blue and like a burnt sienna as a nice combination for a more colorful black. Don't be afraid to use color on a brown animal or a gray animal. Create your browns and grays by using color. And then of course if you're doing a bright colored bird or something, then of course you can use your bright colors, but sometimes we're a little hesitant to create our browns and grays with the bright colors, using complementary color mixtures. Okay, so here he's starting to come alive, and I would do the same thing with these bigger textures on the feet. I would go in with a warm color on the sunlight side. I've made that too close, so I'm going to have to go in and put more distance between these. just enjoy, listen to some nice music and enjoy just slowly working and seeing your little animal come alive as you work on it. And they'll just miraculously appear out of the dark background, or out of the colored background of the paper. So here's my base coat. Put on way too fast because this is a demo that you guys are having to watch, but I take my time and add my darks on the dark side and the lights on the light side as smoothly as possible. And then go in and start to define the texture. And it's following, those little scales are following the curve of the leg. Okay. Seems like this wants to be a little lighter over here, so I might add some more white to lighten up where the sunlight is. It's nice that you can use white on colored paper and it'll actually show up. And then of course I mentioned that at the end I would probably put some grass. She always liked walking in our grass, wandering around and eating stuff out of the garden and the grass. She loved kale and purslane, that weed that's actually good for you, that grows in your yard. Okay, so I'll quit now and have fun working on this. I know I am. I don't want to stop, but other things call. Fun. I'll take, if I work on it anymore before I see you on Tuesday, I will take pictures of it in progress.